let's get into the main story that everybody's been talking about for the last 24 hours, and that has obviously been the whole situation with Jorge Lopez. Now, for those of you who missed it, in the 8th inning yesterday, he was ejected for, I guess, arguing a check swing with third base umpire Ramon de Jesus. I don't know if he said anything. I personally don't even care. On his way out, towards the dugout to the clubhouse, he tossed his glove way into the crowd, untucked his jersey. When they asked Jorge Lopez if he regrets his actions, he did say the following. He said, "I don't regret it. I think that I've been on the worst team in probably the whole fucking MLB. Whatever happened, happened. I've loved this game since I was a kid. It's nothing to feel bad about. I am who I am. I'm not afraid to be me." Now, also as the corresponding move, Jorge Lopez was designated for assignment after this outburst because after Carlos Mendoza, he said that this was not acceptable. Apparently, there was some miscommunication where he lied about not communicating before that interview or something. And then obviously his behavior on the field was what got him DFA'd, not calling this team the worst team in the league, which also has some speculation behind it as well. Maybe he didn't. But as the corresponding move, left-handed pitcher Danny Young has been called up from AAA Syracuse. Frank, you did actually tell me this off stream about kind of the language barrier that was a little bit tough to understand with the media. And I'm kind of confused with it, but I mean, you can explain that a little bit. A little bit more.
So again, keep in mind, like, I want to preface this with, as if you guys are loyal listeners, you know I'm half Puerto Rican. Okay, so like with Jorge Lopez, the language barrier, I get it. It's how my family speaks. Like, I totally understand it. Yeah. So what happened is you have to keep in mind English is not Jorge's first language. So that's the main thing to keep in mind. So he's trying to kind of express his feelings. Obviously, he's extremely frustrated. Anytime you're throwing your glove, your custom-made glove into the crowd, you got to be very aggravated. So Lopez is frustrated, and I feel like it's a combination of things. So first of all, he's frustrated, obviously, with how the team is playing. That's clear, and I think that kind of goes for everybody. You've seen that, just the body language of everyone. I mean, this is not the first reliever to have a blow-up. We've seen Diekman beating up coolers. We've seen iPads get beat up. The bullpen's been going through it this month. I mean, there's been just a lot of overall, just, again, bad body language, breakdowns, whatever you want to call it. There's been a lot of that going on with this team. So Lopez, when you get ejected out of the game, and, you know, he didn't really say much to the umpire. I mean, it was a bit surprising to see him get tossed. So you have that factored in as well. Like, you're just kind of annoyed that you got thrown out of a game when you really didn't deserve it. And now, you know, so we get to the point where he says, "I'm probably the worst teammate in the MLB," because the way it's worded, it doesn't really make sense. And now that when you actually read it, to say this is probably the worst team in the MLB, because the Mets have not been good. Like, we've been clear on that. But when you look at their record yesterday, there's still like 5 other teams that have a worse record than the Mets. Like, the White Sox had 15 wins yesterday. So, like, the Mets have been bad, but they're not actually the worst team in MLB, not yet, at least. I mean, they've kind of been on that trajectory with their play the past couple weeks. But when he says, "I've probably been the worst teammate in the MLB," there's also that piece of, like, he had a bad outing yesterday, and he hasn't been very good this past week or so. I mean, with this DFA, his ERA was getting close to 4, and we don't put too much stock into reliever ERAs, but he's just been on a bit of a downtrend. I think he's been overworked, honestly. I feel like they've used him a lot. I'm pretty sure there was one point where he was like the most used reliever on the team.
26 innings pitched for a reliever in 2 months is a lot. Like,
yeah,
it is a lot.
It's a lot of appearances too. That's the other piece. It's not like he's coming in there once, 2, 3 innings, then you don't see him. It's like 1 inning a pop. So I mean, you're seeing him 26 times in less than 60 games. So it's a lot for a reliever. But I think what he's trying to get is, I've probably been the worst teammate, is that, like, that was a really bad thing to do as a teammate. That made the whole team, the whole organization look bad when he threw the glove into the crowd. The part that confuses me, and the part that makes me the most aggravated, is that after the game, when Carlos Mendoza said, "This is unacceptable, like, we cannot do this," they have a players meeting, which was initiated by Francisco Lindor. The least Lopez could do, at the minimum, is apologize for his actions. if what he's trying to say is that he's been the worst teammate, probably the worst teammate in the MLB, you have got to apologize for what you did on the field and making the organization and the team look bad. That's what he should have said. So that's the part that I'm getting torn up on, is that I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I want to say, okay, English is not your first language. There's no way you meant to say something that bad live into the media. Like, you can't just say, like, literally to the microphones, this is the worst effing team in MLB. You cannot say that. I mean, that is just, you want to talk about being a bad teammate.
Whether it's true or not.
Yeah, I mean,
whether it's true or not,
like,
you know.
Even when Tommy Pham made his comments about the Mets, at least he wasn't still on the team when he said that.
Yeah.
You can't be currently on the team saying they're the worst. I mean, that is just really, that's not a thing. Again, it's not a thing that people do. I mean, this is pretty unprecedented, what we saw yesterday from Jorge Lopez. Just overall, I mean, so between the glove incident, between what he said after the game, so whether, you know, he's trying to say that, like, what the media is saying, the way they quoted him was wrong, but it's like, those are the words that came out of his mouth. I mean, and again, if English is not your first language, it's tough, but ultimately that's what he said. And what kind of is interesting to me is that the Mets don't have like a translator there, a PR guy right there being like, hey, just kind of stepping in. I mean, you see that with some other organizations. I feel like it's a little more prevalent in basketball, where the PR guy is right next to the players and they will kind of be like, no, we're not answering that. Like, or like just kind of someone to help him out a little bit. I feel like he was kind of hung out to dry, and it was like, whatever he said, he's going to say. And, you know, based off of how quickly the Mets DFA'd him, I think the DFA decision was probably instant. Honestly, I feel like once you saw the glove going into the crowd, they're like, oh, he's gone. So I don't know if they really wanted to help him as far as PR and translator. I just think that the situation was handled. I mean, obviously what Lopez said was bad, but I think there are some things you can do as a team to kind of help him out in this situation, to make sure that the wrong things aren't said. Because again, from a PR perspective, whether he meant to say that or not, you can't have your players like, this is the worst team in the MLB. Like, someone has to be there to kind of step in. I really didn't like the way this was handled from both sides. And it's frustrating, you know. It's just, again, it's a bad look for the team. Everyone's just kind of joking on it, and, you know, it's all over everybody's accounts. Even, you know, non-Mets accounts are talking about this and posting the clips and things like that. It's just an embarrassing look. It's embarrassing for the team. It's embarrassing for the fans. Like, it's just been made a really tough time for everybody.
It could have been misheard. It absolutely could have been misheard. Again, English is not his first language. It's not that big of a deal to me as to where, you know, maybe they just misheard. We see things get taken out of context all the time, especially in the New York media. That's how that is. The problem that I have with this, and maybe there is a follow-up to this, I don't know. I did not see it. Maybe somebody can correct me in the chat if you can let me know. Steve Gelbs asked him to clarify what he was saying. And he said, did you say that this is the worst team in the MLB? And he goes, yeah, you can say that. Hold on. Wait a minute. Okay, maybe he did. Maybe he did, and we did mishear that. I don't know if maybe he did not understand what Gelbs said or didn't completely hear what Gelbs said, but Gelbs asked him to clarify it, and he said, yeah, basically. So I don't know. He did go on Instagram, and he said after the game, after he was DFA'd, he said, you know, the words were twisted. That's how the media are saying. Whatever.
So I'm reading some stuff about that's been reported, like with Mendoza and Lopez and everything. It says it right here that he doesn't say whether it was before or after the comments. Mendoza said he doesn't know if language barrier was an issue. A representative for the Mets said Lopez did not request an interpreter. So, and as Mendoza, someone who is bilingual and speaks Spanish, like,
yeah,
I don't know. It's a bad look for a lot of people here. It's
definitely a bad look. I think that the Mets, listen, I think that at the end of the day, once everything happened and everything unraveled, they handled it the right way. They needed to move on from that, and they needed to you know, no nonsense in that way. You can't be throwing your glove into the crowd of frustration. Like, that personally is just unprofessional to me. Like, whether you're in the right or in the wrong or not. I'm not saying what he said or supposedly said was wrong. I mean, I think that there's a lot of Mets fans out there who were like, okay, well, he's telling the truth, so let's keep him. Not really like that. Not really the situation. Not really it. We understand the frustration. It's definitely warranted, but if you're going to open your mouth like that about the organization and do something as embarrassing as you did, whether the team is good or not, that's unacceptable. That can't happen.